This is our latest starter that we released in August. So let's start. Here is the agenda for today. So what is Tsup? Why Tsup Starter? What's inside of it? The issues that we know of, and then we'll finish with live demo and some QA by the end of it. So what is Tsup? According to their creators, it's the simplest and fastest way to bundle your TypeScript libraries. Basically, Tsup is using Is build under the hood, which is the lightning fast bundler, and SWC, which stands for Speedy Web Compiler. Yes. So it's also lightning fast. It even knocks Is build out of the box. So basically, Tsup is using both of them to build the TypeScript libraries and bundle them together. It can bundle everything that is native to Node.js, which is JS, MJS, JSON, and of course TypeScript, TS, and TSX. Support of CSS is still experimental, but it works. First version was released in 2020, and current version is already 8.01 or something, so they are developing really fast, which is a bit funny because as built, that is the core of Tsup, is still in the pre-release. It's still 0 something. So these guys are very ambitious about their product. So it's becoming more and more popular due to its performance and the easiness of use, and hopefully after my presentation it will become even more popular. We'll see. Don't take my word for granted. Look at this Google trend. So it was released something around here, and then it took a year or so, and then it started gaining momentum. So it's becoming more interesting for developers. Okay, so why use our Tsup Starter? The question you may ask yourself is, okay, if I have a TypeScript project, do I really need to use these fancy modern tools to build it? Why can't I use something that has been around for ages, right? And the answer is no, you don't have to use it. For building the TypeScript code, you can use Babel, or you can use TypeScript's own TSC, or you can use Webpack with TS loader. And for bundling, you can use Webpack, and you can use cool new modern products like Rollup or Persist or whatever. But look at this graph, right? So people don't believe anything unless it's benchmarked and presented as a graph. But this is the comparison of performance of Is build as WC and TypeScript's native compiler and Babel. So the higher the worse here. This is, by the way, building of project 300 megabytes big 5 times. So you can see that Babel takes like 70 something seconds, and TypeScript is also not very good, but these guys, they take like 5 seconds or something. So this is for the transpilation, and this is for bundling. So Webpack, which most of us are using, here's again the bigger the better, the bigger the worse. So Is build is just knocking out of these guys out of the park. So yeah, the fact number one and the answer number one to why Tsup Starter is performance when transpiling and bundling. And especially if you have big projects, then it's especially important to have good performance when building stuff. Tree shaking, something that a lot of us struggle with. Tree shaking is basically making sure that your output bundle has only the code that is used. So if you are importing some huge third-party library and you are using just one function, you don't want to bundle the entire library, right? You only want to take what is used by your app. So this is tree shaking. This is comes out of the box. Polyfilling. So we all struggled with Babel polyfills, right? So we need to polyfill stuff in Node.js when using Nashorn. Again, Build has a lot of polyfill plugins that you can use, but they also have something called injection. So if you want to polyfill just one function and not the entire API, then you can just inject it once. So it's like a global polyfill. So you don't have to do import this every time you want to use the polyfill. Code splitting or chunking. This is also a useful thing. So basically, Build will only look at what exports are used in several parts of your app, and it will build a chunk that will only be used there, right? So it's basically again improvement of the performance of your app. So each page will only use the chunk of the bundle that is needed for that page. A generation of type definitions. Not many need that, but sometimes you do, and it's not coming natively when you build TypeScript. So Tsup can do that easily with just one flag. So if you have some kind of API and written in TypeScript and you want to build the type definitions like we do in XP, so this is very handy. Type checking. This is also something that not everyone needs, and it doesn't come out of the box because Build doesn't want to do actions that are not necessary in order to improve the performance, but and this can be easily turned on in Tsup Starter. And this is probably something that everyone will be very excited about, hot reload. This is something that we have been struggling for many years with XP. So we do have the dev mode, which I guess everone is using, but it will only hot reload the server-side changes. But since we are using TypeScript, and most of us are using TypeScript also on the server side, it's important that it's not just the server side that is being reloaded, but also your style sheets, your client-side code as well. This is something that Tsup Starter will give you out of the box, and we'll see that in a few minutes. And we are using something called concurrently to run the asynchronous parallel transpilation of client-side code, server-side code, and the style sheets. So this all goes in parallel, which improves the build time. And of course, yes, linting, and we also threw in some jest tests just to show how it can be done. So it's all in our starter. All right. So you know what features it has, but what is inside, what is packed in the starter. So it's always a challenge for us when we build a new starter to decide what to put in there. So on one hand, we want to just give people a starter, so like a skeleton with the dependencies and build that just builds instantly because there's no code. But it's not very handy for people who want to see the real examples. They want to see some output. They want to see some web app site or they can look at and just change to their own use case. So hopefully we kept the balance right with Tsup Starter. So it was very tempting to add too much, but we kind of first we added too much and then we took half of it away just to not scare you off. So what is inside? When it comes to XPM project structure, which we all are familiar with, so the starter has a site with one simple content type, page template, layout, and demo part. It has a web app. It has one admin tool. It has 3 different types of widgets. It has a service which actually integrates with a third-party lib. It has some localization, 2 types of error handlers, and 1 response processor. So we decided that it will cover kind of most of the things that we don't have X data and so on. So, but there is no end to how much we can put in there. But we want to keep the balance. Code-wise, main.js, of course, this is kind of the main entry point of the site. And we have 2 types of asset handling, and I bet most of you are still using our old way of using the assets folder. And now you want to migrate to the new one, which is using libstatic, because it's more robust and you will basically get better caching of the assets. So the starter has both types. It has integration with React, which will be interesting for most of you. And we have it embedded inside the admin tool, the site, and the web app. So hopefully this will cover most of the cases. We have integration with third-party lib. And we have configurable content security policy, which will hopefully take away a lot of support cases from us. You know what I'm talking about? Yes. And this is good. So if you are using TypeScript and you are using XP, then you definitely want to use the type definitions that we released in 7.11 or something. So starter is using all of them, but you will just comment out those that you don't need. And basically using this will give you code completion, and it will give you a lot of things in your IDE. Very handy. And we do have several sample tests written in Jest. Okay. Enonic APIs I mentioned, and those that we included is task API. So the starter would submit 2 tasks with the same name, and to showcase that we have a check for name uniqueness, because that's also something that a lot of people struggle with. Project API, I don't know if any of you have used that, but you can actually dynamically create content projects and repos. So we have an example for that. We have an app API, which definitely no one has used before, because it's a brand new thing. So you can basically create a virtual application. You no longer need the jar file. You can do it via API. It's still experimental, and it's turned off by default, but it's described in the docs how you can turn this on. And if you are using the app API, then you can also use schema API, which will allow you to create content types and descriptors. So this is something that you as developers of XP should look at, definitely. So basically, you no longer have to build your app. You can just do everything via API. Very convenient. We have some I/O for reading manifest files and localization I mentioned. So that's kind of, we thought that it will be a good balance. Dev mode. We have been very vocal about this in Slack and Discuss, and I mentioned it just briefly. But now we have dev mode, not just for the XP itself, but also in Enonic CLI. And Enonic CLI works seamlessly well with Tsup Starter. So you start with creating a project based on the starter. Then if you are using CLI, then you go to the new projects folder and you just do Enonic dev. And this is a new command that we released in the previous version of CLI, which will do two things. First, three things. 2 minutes. Okay, 2 minutes. Okay, so it will start your XP in dev mode, and it will start a special task in your own project, which will hot reload all of your changes, both server side and client side. And then you will just enjoy working, hopefully. Known issues that we have, briefly. There is no hot reload of client-side changes inside Content Studio because it's limited by content security policy. It can be done, we just didn't get around to do that, but it works outside. So it works in admin tool, it works in preview, and of course live mode. If you have built several apps on the starter, then if you are using both of them on the same site, on the same page, then you will get conflict because our static folder is hard-coded to static. So again, we'll solve this, but we didn't get around to doing that. And the virtual app API, which I mentioned, has to be turned on with the config because it's still experimental. Okay, so I will just show you what I just said. Enonic create yes, meetup. By the way, 7.13.5 is out yesterday. Woohoo! Now I don't want docs. Huh? Even more. You should come closer, Thomas. It's a bad contrast. So I will go to the projects folder, but instead of doing Enonic project deploy, I will do Enonic dev. Bam, bam, bam. It's the first time, right? So it downloads all the node dependencies, but the next times it will be much faster. But I think it's already doing quite well. So this will not complete, by the way, because it's dev mode. It's going to be running endlessly until you stop it with Ctrl+C. So this means that it's that it's up. So now we go here. We do this, and you see that Enonic Starter is here as an application. You probably haven't seen this page. It's on SDK. Okay, so if I don't have time to show this side, then at least, yeah. So here is the admin tool. Maybe that's what I should show you. So this is the sample admin tool that we have, and I will start my IntelliJ. And I will open the app that I have just created. Oh, it's here already. Okay, fine. So, okay, so this is TSX, right? So let's change some text here. Hello, no nickers. But I will not impress you with that because you also want to see some client-side changes, right? So let's change this to green and this to blue. Okay, client side changes and server side changes.